you're selecting the right kind of resident to be able to be in the unit to pay on a regular basis. It has to do with making sure that you're creating a sense that in the community that they want to stay in, right? And then, on a maintenance side of things, you want to make sure that you're building in not only just the regular type maintenance things. You want to be looking for those preventative maintenance things, so that again, when you're ready to do something with this property, it's just in a good position. Someone can walk in and think this is a nice property that's been taken care of well, so that you can get top dollar for it and move on to the next project.
Welcome to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals who work with investors, buyers, and sellers of commercial real estate coast to coast. Whether you're an investor, broker, lender, property manager, attorney, or accountant, we're here to learn from the experts.
Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network CREPN Radio, episode number 156. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jay Darren Gross. This is the podcast focused on commercial real estate investment strategies. Weekly, we have conversations with commercial real estate investors and professionals who provide their experience and insight to help you grow your real estate portfolio. Let's get into the show. Today, my guest is Andrew Kroger. Andrew is the owner of Peak Property Management based in Portland, Oregon. And I met Andrew, it's been a little over a year ago, and how that happened. I was actually cold calling on for insurance purposes on property owners, and came across one of his clients, and she could not say enough great things about Andrew. And so I thought, well, I better meet somebody like that. And so we're going to talk with Andrew here in just a second about what it takes to, or what makes a good property manager. But first, I want to remind you, if you like the show, please let us know. You can do this. You can like, you can share, you can comment, and certainly don't forget you can subscribe to the show. And if you're at all interested on today's episode, we won't have on the YouTube, but if you are interested, most of our shows, there is a video episode, and you can take a look at our handsome guest and watch us. The channel is Commercial Real Estate Pro Network on the YouTube. So now with that, we're ready to speak with Andrew Kroger. Andrew, welcome to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio.
Well, thank you for welcoming, Darren. I'm excited to talk with you today.
Well, and likewise, like I said, we've been trying to schedule this for a while now, and the stars have aligned, and today's the day. So I'm excited to talk with you. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of kind of what makes a good property manager, if you could just take a minute and just share a little bit about your background.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I live here in Portland. I am not native here. I kind of came from New England and traveled across here, where I met my wife, and we've stayed here and set up our family. And I've been involved, in the Portland market here for property management for a little over a decade now. And so I've just found a real passion for doing that and what it's able to do for us as a family and be involved with other people outside of just our business. So property management has been a great option for me. And Portland here is just a diverse place with a lot that's been happening, a lot of growth, and it's been a really exciting place to be. My background is not necessarily in property management. I just kind of found my way there, as happens a lot of times with life. So but again, it's been a really good resource for me moving forward.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you kind of letting us know a little bit about you. And now that we know you're a property manager, and that you have clients that think highly of you, I'm excited to talk with you more about, basically what it takes. And I thought maybe if we kind of start with the relationship between a property manager and investor, if you could maybe give us some of the, I don't know if it's easier to describe kind of a range of clients that you work with, a little bit about the relationship, and what makes a good relationship between an investor and a property manager.
Yeah, it's a great question, Darren. I think it really starts as you're going out to look for a property manager. I think you need to first define what your involvement in the property is going to be. If you're a client who would like to have a property manager kind of handle everything soup to nuts for you, and you just want to be able to check in with them once a month to check on finances and that type of thing, that's a different relationship than you're going to have if you're someone who wants to be really involved in the property, and maybe you want to come and do some landscaping or hang some cabinets when they're doing a turnover. That's a different relationship that you're going to have with a property manager. So I think first you want to define what your level of involvement in the property, the investment is going to be. And then you need to start to try and find folks that are property managers that align with what you're looking for. If you're going to be checking in every month or so, maybe you don't need a property manager that is a large maintenance, say, facilitator. Maybe you want to find someone who's really strong in their financials and things of that nature. You ultimately want to find somebody who has a lot of integrity, who you can communicate very easily with, and however you communicate, whether that's emails, phones, whatever that communication pattern is, you want to make sure that that's similar to their communication patterns, and you want to make sure that the person is always going to have your best interests in mind, which sounds easy, but it can be challenging. And so developing a relationship with your property manager and the right relationship is extremely important to your success. And so making sure that those, again, your level of involvement matches the level of expectation that the property manager can supply for you.
Got it. It's kind of a wide range there. You mentioned from the kind of a do-it-for-me kind of a relationship, and then the investor that wants to be more involved. Do you at Peak, do you work with kind of a range like that, or do you kind of set a level that of service you provide and an expectation with the customer that they are involved at this point or not beyond this point?
Yeah, we do work with a range of clients. There's no doubt about that. I think everyone has a little bit of a different level of involvement that they like to have. I have found, though, that my clients that are more involved with me and with the property tend to have a better success rate on their properties. It's the communication with the property manager, the back and forth communication on a regular basis about your goals and objectives allows the property manager to assess, to make sure that they're hitting those goals and objectives. If you're checking in on a less frequent basis, or you're not as involved, you're leaving a lot of the decision making solely up to your property manager. And again, maybe you have a great relationship and you feel that you're okay doing that. Maybe you just want to be more involved to make sure that those decisions are being made. At the end of the day, it's your dollars that are being spent. We have a thing called OPM, other people's money, that we are very conscious of what we do and how we do it. So for me at Peak, I find that I like to find a client that likes to be more involved. I like to take on that role because, again, it just gives me clarity to whether we're going in the right direction.
Got it. So when you say more involved, can that be just limited to more of a communication involvement?
Absolutely. Okay. And with the ability to communicate, whether it's phone calls, emails, Skype, whatever it might be, to be able to check in to get an idea. And again, that's when it comes down to what does your level need to be? What's your comfort level need to be in that checking in process? But the more you're looking over something in general in life, I feel like the greater success it's going to have. Got it.
So with respects to all that you do as a property manager, in my mind, there's a couple of distinctions, and maybe you can let me know if I'm thinking correctly or if there's a more granular way to look at this. But I know a lot of the focus and a lot of the energy, the conversation, if you will, that I've been a part of, it's been about acquisitions. The market is, it's ripe for opportunity. I mean, demand is high for multifamily right now. It seems like even while there's a lot of new construction going on, it feels like the construction isn't out of hand. Interest rates are starting to go up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all sorts of indicators that suggest it's not just a flash in the pan, but it's got some staying power. And I think that because of its success, it's drawn a lot of attention, a lot of investors, et cetera. And so that acquisition aspect, I know I've talked with others that are syndicators and, whether they're from afar, et cetera, and they talk about teammates and property management being one of the team members. Can you explain a little bit about what you do and what a property manager's role can be in the acquisition of a property?
Yes, and that's really the best time to get a property manager involved is when you're in that acquisition phase. What that does is that allows you to get their insight on the property. You're trying to identify the potential of a property as an investor, and you're trying to look at where it currently stands. The difference between that potential and where it currently stands have factors that you may or may not be able to control: location, construction type, tenant makeup. What the current market is. So if you can start to understand what that difference is between those items, you can hopefully start to figure out where you would like to end in that potential range and start to develop a broad plan, a 1, 3, 5 year plan that you're looking to help move this property in a certain direction potentially. And that is the point where a property manager can step in and start to help you formulate some of those ideas a little bit more clearly, put some finances behind it, factor in what typical operating expenses are going to be, and then what funds you'll have remaining to actually work towards these goals and when you'll be able to actually realize them. And that insight, I think, is incredibly important. That acquisition phase is a time for a property manager and an investor to start to build that relationship, to get all those questions kind of ironed out about, how would we handle this issue, or where do we want to do these types of things, and understand better. The property manager gets better understanding of the priority level from the investor, so they can manage better for them. So that's really the best time to get a property manager involved, is that acquisition phase, so they can be part of that process for you in creating that plan of where you're going to go with this property.
Got it. And when once you do align with a investor, you go out and do a physical walkthrough of the property to get that kind of assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of times I ask to be there when we do the inspection of the property. My team will go through and we'll do our own little inspection, because we look for things a lot of times that are different than, say, a building inspector would look for. We're going to look for things that are maybe a little bit more preventative in nature, things that we could maybe some added benefits that we could think about moving in. And again, it allows us to come up with a little bit of a plan so that we can have some insight into the plan that the client, the investor, is trying to create as well. Again, it gives us, everybody gets all that information. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll actually go through and do a full punch list and just, again, come up with some finances so we can factor that into the plan of wherever that property is going. You have to have a full look on everything to be able to understand how to manage it.
No, I like that. And I'm assuming in your business, the sooner you're involved, so that you can, work that up and help with the investor and their due diligence, the better. Is that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we take over properties all the time too that are, not via acquisition. They're just change in management companies. And for us, the process is very similar. We need to get into that property. We need to walk it, inspect it, understand it, so that we can come back to the investor and say, okay, this is what we see. Now, what have you seen? Where do you want to go with this property? And again, we can bring it all back together. For us, the process is pretty similar, but it's more beneficial, I think, to the investor, especially to have us involved in the upfront piece of the acquisition, because again, you understand the relationship there is able to be given a little bit more time to develop.
Got it. Let's shift gears here and talk a little bit about the operating of the property. Can you take us through kind of and I don't know if it makes sense to start from you being hired as the manager. You've got a new property that an investor said, okay, Andrew, I want Pink to manage my property. Or if we can just talk about some of the different elements of an operator and what an investor should be looking for and asking questions about from a property manager on some solid answers versus maybe some indicators that maybe this property manager might not be a good alternative. Does that make sense?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, no, it definitely does. Well, I think some of the basic things that you want to understand is about the services first the property manager supplies for you. Those basic things should be, rent collection, leasing, accounting. They should be able to, whether they have maybe in-house maintenance or they should be able to coordinate maintenance one way or another for you. I would assume there's typically a site management aspect to property management, someone that the residents would be able to have relations with. You want to be able to have some budgeting done and some forecasting so you can have a plan of where you're going, and then some regular reporting on what's actually happening at the property. Those are some of the basic items that you have to have for a good property manager. Other things you want to be asking them, though, is, how often are they visiting this site? And when they're visiting the site, what are they looking at? What are they doing on the site? Again, you as an investor want your property to be looked at. You want to make sure that preventative items are being addressed sooner rather than later, so that you maintain the integrity of the building. You want to know what kind of screening practices the property manager does to bring in new tenants. Your foundation of your property is built on that client base and them being there regularly. So you want to understand what qualifications are being required of these people to move in. You probably want to know what some of the current clients are saying about this person. So ask for referrals. The referrals will give you a lot of insight on how this person communicates and operates, and just some general feelings about the property manager. And then you probably want to know a little bit about the company itself and what their infrastructure is. Do they have key people involved? Is their infrastructure going to be able to match the needs of your property? Those are some of the big things I would think that you really want to focus on. And then, just what's their general philosophy on communication with residents and maintaining that dialogue, which again is it's important for you as an investor to have a regular, a steady flow of income. My philosophy is that people typically move into an apartment. We try and make it into a home so that maybe they want to stay a little bit longer, maybe they want to take care of it a little bit longer. And at the end of the day, as an investor, that is all beneficial to you. So, those are kind of the main things you want to be looking for when you start talking to property managers and interviewing them.
Got it. I'm just thinking through of all the different things, and I know that there's a tremendous service that property managers provide, and especially for an investor that whether they're on the different levels you described from how engaged they want to be, if they want to be periodically or if they're actually hands-on, but just that you made that sense of just the level of involvement, or I guess the success of the property and that communication. Do you ever have on these list of things that you mentioned, are there things that you found that investors have gotten involved in and messed up and you've had to come clean up, or is that pretty well defined up front?
I think it can be pretty well defined up front. I think one of the areas is, if you have if you're someone that wants to be involved with the property, I think it's just important to remember that you hired a property manager for a certain reason. If you get a call from a disgruntled resident who wanted to track you down, it's best to point that resident back towards the property manager. There are so many things that happen in our industry with different laws and regulations. Your property manager should be up on those things, and you personally don't want to put yourself in any type of liability that could cause you harm in that action. So refer things back to your property manager if people start to get questioning with you about different items. But if you're someone who wants to get up and get involved, I think it's just a matter again of having that communication with your property manager, and making sure that they know what your expectations are, so that when you're there to do whatever it is you're doing, everyone's on the same page. It really comes down to that communication piece.
I got it. Laws and regulations. I mean, I know in Portland, and I'm certain you're aware. I mean, it seems like it's constantly changing.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't stress enough, just from an insurance standpoint, as a broker, that I just know that's kind of some slippery. It can be a slippery slope if you don't follow the rules, and you can end up in all sorts of doo-doo, or have some problems on your hands there. So that's excellent.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you on, and this kind of goes back to a conversation you and I had before. It's probably been, I don't know, months or maybe even a year ago, but you had indicated kind of your sense of things was that you're always trying to help the property owner be prepared for sale. And
yes.
And I, if you could speak a little bit to that, because I think that's, especially investors that are getting in thinking that they're going to turn a property or something like that, but just that mentality of a property man or manager, realizing that this is an investment and that the investor's got some sort of an end game.
Yeah, no, and again, it comes down to, we talked a little bit about in the acquisition phase and getting the understanding of what those goals and objectives are for that client, and understanding those. And typically, most of my clients are in a process that they've bought a few duplexes, and now they've updated to a 10-unit complex, and now they've bought a few of those, and they're moving up. They're in a planned process of where they're going. So as a property manager, you need to understand what the plan is. You need to know that there is going to be an end game, and it may come sooner than you had thought. And that's based on a lot of different factors. Market changes here in Portland have made it so some clients are looking to sell sooner than their plan had initiated. But that's an option. And so as a property manager, you want to make sure that the investment that you're working on is always bettering itself. You want to leave it better than you took it over, so that your client has a valuable option to be able to use to move forward in their plan. And so that takes all different kinds of phases, and making sure that, one, you're selecting the right kind of resident to be able to be in the unit to pay on a regular basis. It has to do with making sure that you're creating a sense that in the community that they want to stay in, right? And then on a maintenance side of things, you want to make sure that you're building in not only just the regular type maintenance things. You want to be looking for those preventative maintenance things, so that, again, when you're ready to do something with this property, it's just in a good position. Someone can walk in and think, this is a nice property that's been taken care of well, so that you can get top dollar for it and move on to the next project.
Got it. Can you speak a little bit about your relationship with the different vendors and how that is beneficial for a property manager as opposed to an individual investor with maybe just one property?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Well, for me, my goal is efficiency. The sooner I can get a job done, whether it's a regular maintenance order or maybe it's a turnover of a unit, the either happier I'm going to have a resident who's living there because we got taken care of something, or the quicker we're going to be able to get a unit back onto the market. So for me, I try and have multiple relationships with different vendor resources. So, 5 to 10 different electricians, 5 to 10 different plumbers, so that when something happens or you need to get something scheduled, you can do so quickly and efficiently. In regards to your turnover process, I've found that the farther out you can communicate with those vendor resources about your needs, whether it's a painter or a plumber or whatever it might be, if you can call them and say, I'm going to have a unit that's going to be coming vacant here in 20 days, I'd like to get you on the schedule, they're going to be more friendly with you if something comes up closer to that turn date, to push them back or change their schedule. So being able to have a relationship with them, and a lot of them, helps ensure that you're going to be able to get service quickly, and also keeps all your vendors fair, keeps the pricing within reason, so that you can be shopping them to be making sure that you're getting the best value for the service needed.
That totally makes sense. What on a turn time, just out of curiosity, from a light turn to a remodel, kitchen bath kind of thing, can you give some sort of a timeline of expectation that you would try and hit?
Sure. Yeah, and I think for a normal turn where you've had someone who's lived in the unit on a relatively light basis, you're going to be in a between 3 to 4 day turnover. And that's probably your paint, maybe some flooring, blinds, cleaning, some general maintenance, those types of items should be able to happen in about 3 to 4 days and get it back on market. If you're looking at larger upgrades, if you're looking at, cabinets or any kind of demo, windows, any of those types of things, it's going to extend out your time. It's hard to tell you exactly how long it would be. And that's why I think it's really important when you get notice on a unit that it's going to be coming vacant to get into that unit within 24 to 48 hours to assess the needs for the upcoming turn. You may not be able to tell all the little nuances, maybe a plug isn't working that you don't catch, but you'll be able to go through that unit and say, this is going to need a full paint. We're definitely going to have to do cabinets, whatever it might be that your big projects are, so that you can be ahead of that turn time. Here in Portland, especially, vendors are busy. Summer is busy. So the farther out we can be scheduling, the quicker, more efficient you can make that turn time happen. So, they're all project dependent on speed and time, but the earlier you can be in communication with your vendor sources to get the items scheduled, the quicker that turn will be.
Got it. I want to touch just real quick on the financials and stuff. Obviously, the investors are looking for, the rent or at least the after the expenses, et cetera. Can you speak a little bit to the level of reporting you guys provide, or that somebody should be looking for, and the timeliness of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's different formatting for reporting on finances, I'm sure, all around. What we do is we do a weekly report first to our clients, that they receive that on Fridays. And that has everything to do with, what we might have for vacancies, what we have for delinquencies, if we have any guest cards, people coming to the property to view units, any maintenance requests that might be going on. And then for us, we're always looking for lease increases, our 30, 60, 90-day out lease increases, so that everybody's on the same page with where we're going with rents. On a monthly basis, you should be getting a notification that would have all your typical statements you would require, be like a balance sheet, a profit and loss statement, a rent roll, check register, perhaps an age payable, some of those basic reconciliations, basic items in your accounting should be there on a monthly basis. And then annually, you want to make sure that you get the annual 12-month profit and loss statement so that you can share that with your accounting team. You should be issued 1099 for any rents you've collected. So again, you can bring that as well. And those should be the basic things that you should be getting out of finances. Again, I think it's important that a property manager does some budgeting and forecasting. So hopefully that's something that you're involved in throughout the year as well, so that you can measure month by month how you're doing.
Got it. On the, you'd mentioned kind of the list of things that services. On site management, is there a level or size of property where you would look to have somebody on the site full time as opposed to, off site?
Yeah, so my personal rule of thumb used to be at about 20 units was when you wanted to think of doing some site management. Over the years, that's changed a little bit for me, and it's really become based on the needs of the property. You may have a 30-unit building that is in just a wonderful area of town. You have really easy residents who communicate well, take care of the place, and it could be managed from off-site. You may have a 15-unit place that's in a tough area of the city. It has a tough client base, and there's just a lot of needs. There's a lot going on. So again, I think that's part of the initial assessment, is understanding, what is the potential of this property and where do we stand today? In fact, factoring in that need for a potential site manager or not, based on the current conditions of the property. And again, some of those things can evolve and change. I've worked on properties where we have not had a site manager, and it just hasn't worked out. We've had to bring one on, and then bringing one on, you can slowly start to change whatever those factors are that are making it more challenging for operation, so that you can get it back to that point where maybe it doesn't need to have a site manager. There should always be some oversight over the property. I think that, again, having somebody come by the property on a regular basis to visit with your residents, to look at the property, to make sure that when it's raining, the gutters aren't overflowing. You need to have somebody who has eyes to look at those basic things to make sure that the property is being taken care of.
Got it. On leasing, is there any kind of I guess what I'm trying to understand is that pretty much the investor kind of communication with the property manager that sets kind of the criteria, or are there some words of wisdom you can share with investors when they're looking for a property manager as to what criteria they should be looking for with respect to the tenants that they're leasing to?
Yeah, absolutely. And most property managers will have a set of criteria that they can provide to a client to let them know what their basic criteria are. Typical things that you want to be looking at are, you want to know obviously what the income is, what their debt is. A credit score is nice to have a good idea of how they've been on their history of payments. You want to know if they have had any type of eviction history. Criminal information. You want to make sure you're screening for that. Part of what we do in our screening is we make sure that we call previous landlords to make sure that you're getting a good reference from somebody else. Because again, bringing in the right person into your property makes a big difference on where it goes. And if you have a looser criteria, you have a chance for more inconsistent payments and things of that nature that could affect the operation of the property. An income, you want to have probably 3 times the amount of rent, ideally, so that you know that someone can make those payments and live easily as well.
Got it. On working with the investors and stuff, have you ever had to fire a client?
I have, and sometimes it's just because the communication doesn't work. We get into a relationship and I realize that this isn't the communication type that I work well with. I work well with a lot of communication types, but there are times when a relationship just doesn't work. And I think as a property manager, you need to recognize that if you don't like to have to pick up a phone call from somebody, then the relationship isn't working. And for the best interest of the client, you should talk to them about either resolving the issue or moving forward. And for me, I just had a situation. I've only had to do it once where it just wasn't going to work. Yeah,
well, that's good. I mean, I think the theme I keep hearing here, and I know in my own business that communication is kind of the key. If you're not responding, or if you only work by Pony Express and smoke signals, and
right,
it's not exactly conducive to problem solving and moving forward. So that makes complete sense.
I think there's a real expectation on communication these days, and if you can't meet those expectations or they're not being met on both sides, it's just it can't work. It's a lot more challenging to work.
Got it. If we were to sum up our conversation for one thing that you would recommend that an investor, do, I guess, when they're looking for a property manager, is there one thing that you would say, make sure this?
I think we just kind of hit on it here with the communication piece. Develop that relationship before you get too far down the road. If you can bring somebody in during that acquisition phase, if you can bring a few people in during that acquisition phase to talk with them, to get a better understanding of who they are and how they operate, contact their referrals so that you get, not just their perspective on how they operate, but other people's perspective. That relationship is paramount to your success. And so understanding them and being able to communicate with them on a regular basis, that's what's going to allow you to carry forward and have a lot of success, is making sure that relationship works for you and for the property manager.
Got it. Andrew, where can the listeners go to find out more about you and connect and learn more?
Yeah, you can look us up on peakpropertymgt.com, and that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of us and learn a little bit more about us and what we do and how we do it.
Got it. Hey, Andrew, thanks again for taking the time to talk today. I've learned a bunch, and hope we can do it again soon.
Fantastic. Thank you, Darren. I really appreciate the time as well.
For our listeners, if you like this episode, please subscribe. We'd love to have you along, and if you do subscribe, you'll be sure to catch all of our episodes when they post. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. That's all we've got this week. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio.
You're listening to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals. For more information on this or any of our guests, like us on Facebook, CREPN Radio.